You ask people to respect you. You explain yourself when you shouldn't. You justify your decisions to those who never earned the right to question them. And every time you do, you lose a little more authority. Not because you're weak, but because you're operating from a frame that was designed to keep you powerless. You're sitting in a meeting. Someone interrupts you mid-sentence. You pause. You wait for them to finish. You smile slightly. You continue where you left off. You think that's maturity? It's not. It's a submission. You just taught everyone in that room that your words can be stepped on, that your time is negotiable, that your presence doesn't command space, it commands permission. You're with a woman you're interested in. She cancels at the last minute. You reply quickly. You ask if everything's okay. You suggest another time immediately. You think that's care. It's not. It's desperation. You just showed her that her time is more valuable than yours, that her absence creates panic, that you'll rearrange yourself to fit her schedule because you don't believe she'll come back unless you make it easy. You're with friends. One of them makes a joke at your expense. Everyone laughs. You laugh too. You add to it. You make yourself the punchline. You think that's social intelligence. It's not. It's self-betrayal. You just told the group that you'll participate in your own humiliation to stay included, that you'll trade dignity for belonging, that you don't protect your image because you're afraid of being seen as too serious. These aren't random moments, these are tests, and you've been failing them your entire life. Not because you lack intelligence, but because you were raised in a system that rewarded agreeableness and punished dominance. You were taught that respect is earned through kindness. That authority comes from being liked. That power is given to those who ask politely and wait their turn. Machiavelli understood something your teachers didn't. Respect is not a feeling. It's a response to perceived power. People don't respect you because you're good. They respect you because you occupy a position they cannot ignore. And the moment you ask for it, you admit you don't have it. This script shows you 7 psychological shifts Machiavelli would use to command respect without ever asking for it. These aren't social skills, these are power mechanisms. And if you're still addicted to being liked, you won't survive them. Most people will leave in the next 60 seconds. They'll feel uncomfortable, they'll call this manipulative. They'll retreat into the same passive patterns that keep them invisible. But if you stay, you'll understand why silence is more dominant than explanation, why distance creates value, why refusing to react is the highest form of control, and why the people who respect you most are the ones you never tried to impress. Put your phone face down and listen. If this hit you, write, "I am the strategist" once in the comments, just to mark the day your mindset changed. You've been taught to fill silence. When someone questions you, you explain. When someone doubts you, you justify. When someone waits for you to speak, you rush to fill the gap because silence feels like failure. It's not. Silence is the arena where power is decided. And every time you break it first, you lose. Here's what happens. Someone asks you a question that's designed to test you. It's not about information, it's about positioning. They want to see if you'll explain yourself, if you'll defend. Suppose you'll step into their frame and perform. Most people do. They hear the question and immediately start talking. They give reasons, they provide context, they try to win approval through logic. And in doing so, they hand over authority. Machiavelli would let the silence sit. He wouldn't rush. He wouldn't fill the gap with nervous words. He'd hold the pause and let the other person feel the weight of it, because silence forces them to reveal their intention. If they were genuinely curious, they would wait. If they were testing you, they'd start to crack. They'll restate the question. They'll soften their tone. They'll do something to ease the tension. And when they do, you know they're not in control. You are. You see this in negotiations. The person who speaks first after the offer loses. You see this in confrontations. The person who explains first admits guilt. You see this in dating. The person who texts first after a pause shows investment. Silence is not empty. Silence is pressure. and most people can't handle it. When you refuse to fill the silence, you stop being the performer. You stop trying to win the moment with words. You let your presence do the work. And presence is built on one thing: the belief that you don't need their approval to exist in the space you occupy. This doesn't mean you never speak. It means you say it when you choose, not when you're prompted. You don't react, you respond. And the gap between those two actions is where dominance lives. You've been taught to be available, to reply quickly, to show up when people need you, to make yourself easy to reach, because that's what good people do. But availability is not generosity, it's a signal. And the signal you're sending is this: my time has no cost, my attention is free. I'll rearrange myself to accommodate you because I don't believe I have other options. Machiavelli understood scarcity. He knew that value is not determined by quality, it's defined by access. The more complicated something is to reach, the more weight it carries. This applies to objects, it applies to opportunities, and it applies to you. When you're always available, you remove the barrier. People don't have to plan around you. They don't have to consider your time. They don't have to wonder if you'll show up. You've already shown them you will, and once they know that, they stop valuing your presence. You become the background, reliable, functional, forgettable. Watch how people treat the person who always answers versus the person who sometimes doesn't. The first one gets taken for granted. Their texts get delayed responses, their calls get ignored, their invitations get soft declines, because people know they'll still be there tomorrow. The second one gets priority. Their messages get immediate attention, their calls get returned, their time gets protected, not because they're rude, but because their presence feels conditional. You don't have to disappear, you just have to stop being guaranteed. When someone texts you, don't reply in 2 minutes. Wait. Let them sit with uncertainty. When someone invites you somewhere, don't confirm instantly. Take time. Let them wonder if you're coming. When someone asks for your time, don't give it freely. Make it clear that access to you requires alignment with your priorities. This isn't cruelty. This is calibration. You're teaching people that your time is finite, that your attention is selective, that your presence is not a right, it's a reward. And the moment you do this, something shifts. People start planning around you. They start asking earlier. They start valuing the moments they get with you. Not because you demanded it, but because you made it obvious through your behavior that you're not waiting for them. You're moving, and they either align or they don't. You've been taught to explain your decisions, to give reasons, to walk people through your logic so they understand. But the explanation is not clear. It's a submission. Every time you explain yourself to someone who didn't ask with genuine respect, you're admitting that their opinion holds authority over your choices. And Machiavelli would tell you this. Authority doesn't explain, it decides. Here's the pattern. You make a decision, someone questions it. Not because they're confused, but because they want to test whether you're solid. You feel the pressure. You want them to understand. So you explain, you give context, you justify. And in doing so, you move from the position of decision maker to defendant. You're now on trial, and they're the judges. This happens at work. You set a boundary, you say no to a request, someone pushes back, they ask why. You give a reason, they counter it. You provide another reason, they counter again. Now you're in a loop, and the longer you stay in it, the weaker you look because you've entered a frame where your decisions need approval. This happens in relationships. You make a choice, your partner questions it. You explain. They disagree. You explain more. They still disagree. Now you're negotiating a decision you already made, and you're doing it because you're afraid of being seen as unreasonable. But the moment you explain a decision to someone who didn't respect it in the first place, you've already lost the frame. Machiavelli would not explain. He would restate. There's a difference. Explanation tries to win agreement. Restatement reasserts the decision. When someone questions you, you don't give reasons. You repeat the outcome. I've decided not to. That's not something I'm doing. I'm not available for that. No logic, no defense, no invitation for debate. This feels cold. It is. But coldness is not cruelty. It's clear. You're not trying to hurt them. You're refusing to let them reframe your authority as something that needs their permission. Watch what happens when you stop explaining. People stop questioning, not because they agree, but because they realize the conversation is over. You've closed the loop, and if they keep pushing, they're the ones who look unreasonable. You force them to either accept your decision or reveal that they were never asking, they were testing. You've been taught to react. Someone disrespects you. You correct them. Someone insults you. You defend yourself. Someone challenges you. You fight back. And every time you do, you prove that they control you, because reaction is evidence of investment. And investment is evidence of vulnerability. Machiavelli called this the trap of visibility. When you react, you show where your buttons are. You teach people exactly what to do to get a response from you. And once they know that, they own you. They can trigger you whenever they want. They can pull your focus. They can drain your energy, not because they're powerful, but because you made yourself predictable. This shows up everywhere. Someone makes a passive-aggressive comment. You respond, you clarify, you push back, and now the entire interaction is about you defending yourself. They set the frame, and you entered it. You're no longer in control of the conversation. You're in reaction mode. The reaction mode is always weaker than the decision mode. Someone tries to provoke you in public. They say something designed to make you look bad. You feel the pressure. You want to correct the record, so you respond. You explain, you counter, and everyone watching sees exactly what just happened. You got baited. You took the bait, and now you're the one who looks rattled. Machiavellian respect doesn't come from winning arguments. It comes from refusing to enter them. When someone disrespects you, you don't defend. You disengage. When someone insults you, you don't counter. You go silent. When someone tries to provoke you, you don't react. You let the moment pass. And that silence, that refusal to engage, communicates something far more substantial than any comeback ever could. It says this: you're not worth my energy. This doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. It means you don't give it oxygen. You don't feed it with attention. You let it sit in the air, and if the person continues, you remove yourself. You don't announce it. You don't make a scene. You stop being available. And that absence does more damage than any confrontation ever could. Because when you react, you show that their words reached you. When you disengage, you show that their words don't exist. One makes you human. The other makes you untouchable. You've been taught to seek approval, to check in, to make sure people are okay with your decisions, to get a consensus before you move, and every time you do, you transfer power, because approval seeking is an admission. It says this: I don't trust my own judgment. I need external validation to proceed. And the moment you do that, you stop leading. You start following. Machiavelli understood that leaders don't ask permission. They inform. There's a difference. Asking permission puts the other person in the position of authority. They get to approve or deny. They get to evaluate whether your idea is good enough. Informing keeps you in the position of authority. You've already decided. You're just letting them know. This happens in small ways. You want to leave an event early. You say, "Is it okay if I head out?" That's approval seeking. You've handed them the power to decide whether your departure is acceptable. Compare that to, "I'm heading out. Good seeing you." That's informing. You've already made the decision. You're not asking if it's okay, you're stating what's happening. This happens in bigger ways. You have an idea at work. You pitch it carefully. You ask what people think. You wait for validation. You adjust based on feedback. You try to get everyone comfortable before you proceed. And in doing so, you've turned your vision into a committee project. It's no longer yours, it's theirs. And if it fails, you have no one to blame because you gave them the authority to shape it. Machiavelli would not ask, he would declare. He would present the decision as done. Not as a proposal, not as something up for debate, as reality. And if people had concerns, he'd listen. But he wouldn't let their concerns rewrite the decision unless they brought something he hadn't considered. He wouldn't soften his conviction just to make them comfortable. When you stop seeking approval, people stop seeing you as someone who needs it. They start seeing you as someone who moves. And movement creates respect. Approval seeking creates doubt. Because every time you ask if something is okay, you plant the idea that maybe it's not. You've been told to be humble, to downplay your wins, to deflect compliments, to make sure people know you're not too proud. And in doing so, you've been trained to sabotage your own image. Humility, when performed for others, is not a virtue, it's a concession. You're lowering yourself so they don't feel uncomfortable with your rise. Machiavelli didn't believe in false humility. He believed in perception management. He knew that people respect what they see as powerful, and if you constantly minimize yourself, you train them to do the same. You teach them that your accomplishments are not that significant, that your value is negotiable, that you're not really a threat. This shows up in how you talk about yourself. Someone asks what you do, you soften it, you downplay the title, you add a joke, you make it smaller than it is. You think that's relatability. It's not. It's self-erasure. You're making it your business to overlook shows that come up in how you handle compliments. Someone praises your work. You deflect. You say it was nothing. You credit someone else. You make it clear you don't want to be seen as impressive. You think that's modesty. It's not. It's a rejection of your own value. You're telling people not to see you as excellent, and they listen. Machiavelli would not deflect. He would accept. He wouldn't brag, but he wouldn't shrink either. When someone acknowledged his work, he'd say, "Thank you." He'd let the compliment land. He'd let people associate him with competence, because perception is built through repetition. And if you repeatedly tell people you're not that impressive, they'll believe you. This doesn't mean you boast. It means you stop apologizing for taking up space. You stop making yourself smaller to make others comfortable. You let your presence be what it is, and you trust that the people who respect you will do so because of what you actually are, not because you performed humility to earn it. You've been taught that power is loud. That dominance means confrontation. That authority requires aggression, and because of that, you've been trying to prove yourself in ways that make you look weaker. You raise your voice, you argue, you defend, you assert, and every time you do, you reveal insecurity, because absolute power doesn't announce itself, it just exists. And everyone in the room feels it. Machiavelli knew this. He understood that the most dangerous people are the ones who don't need to remind you they're dangerous. They don't posture. They don't threaten. They don't explain what they're capable of. They and the consequences speak for themselves. This is why silence is more threatening than a raised voice. This is why distance is more painful than confrontation. This is why removal is more effective than punishment, because all of those things force the other person to fill the gap. And in filling it, they reveal how much power you actually have. When you yell, you're trying to create impact. When you go silent, the effect is already in place. When you argue, you're trying to win the moment. When you withdraw, the moment is already over. When you threaten, you're hoping they'll believe you. When you act, belief is irrelevant. This is the shift most people never make. They think power is performance. It's not. Power is position, and position is determined by who holds the frame, who controls access, and who decides when the interaction ends. Machiavelli would not fight for respect. He would create conditions where disrespect becomes costly. He wouldn't demand acknowledgement. He would make his absence more noticeable than his presence. He wouldn't argue his value. He would let the results speak. And when people questioned him, he wouldn't defend. He would remove access. Because respect is not a gift, it's a calculation. People respect you when the cost of disrespecting you is higher than the cost of acknowledging you. And if you make yourself easy to disrespect, you've made the calculation simple. There's no cost. So they take the shortcut. You reverse this by building cost. You make your time scarce. You make your attention conditional. You make your presence selective. You make your decisions final. And you do all of this without explanation, without anger, without performance. You just did it in a way that makes it obvious. I don't need you to respect me, but if you want access to me, you will. Most people spend their lives trying to be respected. They explain, they perform, they seek approval, they adjust themselves to fit other people's expectations, and they wonder why they're still treated like an option. It's because they're acting like one, they're negotiating their value, they're asking for permission, they're waiting to be chosen. Machiavelli would tell you this. You don't get chosen, you become unchosen without consequence. You build a life where people either respect you or they lose access, where your value is not up for debate because the proof is already in motion, where your decisions don't require validation. After all, because the outcome speaks louder than their opinion, this is not cruelty. This is a structure. You're not hurting anyone. You're refusing to participate in your own devaluation. You're stepping out of the frame where respect is sometimes seeable, and you're stepping into the frame where respect is the natural response to someone who doesn't need it. Here's your real-world challenge. For the next 7 days, stop explaining yourself. When someone questions a decision you've made, restate it. Don't justify. Don't dispend. Just repeat the outcome and move forward. Watch what happens. Watch how many people stop pushing. Watch how many people start treating your words as final. And if someone keeps pushing, remove access. Don't announce it. Don't make it personal. Just stop being available. Let your absence teach the lesson your words never could. If you found value here, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you want more. But don't do it to support me. Do it because you recognize that this information changes the game. And most people will never have access to it because they're too afraid to accept what power actually requires. If this hits you, write, "I am the strategist" once in the comments, just to mark the day your mindset changed. You are no longer the person who asks for respect. You are the person whose absence creates it. Move accordingly.